first time printing, first time card issue, but I am very happy to learn that now CSCs, it has been agreed to that the permanent stations which had to be created for the updation of UID cards, CSCs has been made portal of that, so that additional service would come. On this banking correspondent model, I remember that somewhere in 2011 when we left, we had already about 600 such centers had been set up in Madhya Pradesh, and State Bank at that point of time had about 670, 680 centers across the country. They liked the idea so much that they went across the country to open, but in other places probably that convergence could not be through. But I am happy to learn, as Mr. Tyagi tells me, that 16,000 additional BCs have been approved. After that, when this financial inclusion model was being driven and DBT was being driven, we in the Department of Financial Services talked about various models. One thing that Little Mass and Fino Technology models had was, it was more or less like an offline model. A client had to be connected only to that particular machine, because at the end of the day the record would be updated. The advantage with the CSC model or any other online model for that matter, even if you have a handheld device, if it is online, transaction is immediately reflected in the CBS of the bank. So the biggest advantage CSC to my mind had were two advantages. One was it was online model, and second, it had a fixed place which would instill more faith in people. So after that BC, after a lot of debate within the department, where even though I was not looking after financial inclusion, but our secretary always used to call me, because we had sent a team to Madhya Pradesh. She had seen this, especially this same CSC which I talked about. The team of the finance ministry had seen that, and they had said this is the right model for going ahead with BC. So even though we have not said that this is the only model, but it is one of the competing models, and we have to actually prepare ourselves for the competition. And finally, in a day of competition, we have to prove our worth by giving the most cost efficient services. And not only cost is one part and efficient services is another part. In the meanwhile, the department had come up with another model called ultra small branches. In the ultra small branches is basically upgradation of CSC in a way. You have a branch where a man is sitting with a computer giving all the banking services, and the bank officer would visit. Finally, this has been approved by RBI also. So there are certain banks because banks have been given targets to open branches, and there are specific targets like the whole area, geographical area has to be converted into sub-service areas, and they have to be given service within a distance of 5 kilometers, and that kind of stipulations have been made by the department. So banks have to look at all alternative models, but BC is the in thing. They are looking very aggressively at BCs, and informal discussions tell us that most of the banks are very happy that BCs in the CSC mode would come out to be a better thing, because they already have a fixed place and online model. So I am sure this partnership can really go a long way. We would be very happy to see that all the 125,000 CSCs are converted as banking correspondents. Of course, that will take us to the infrastructure challenges which Mr. Dinesh Tyagi talked about, the power and the internet connectivity. Therefore, there is another challenge is we can really help the CSCs to overcome that challenge by making a lean program, so that the data communication can be achieved with a better card. Like in MP Online, we used to do this. Initially, we found that in the remote areas where the connectivity was poor, and the actual transmission, even though BSNL would claim that the transmission is at 2 kbps or 1 kbps, but the actual transmission would be something like 144 bits per second. So we actually converted our programs to make them so lean that even with that kind of data card connectivity, the transmission was possible within a reasonable time. I mean, even if when you want to upload, okay, it will go on for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but finally it would get uploaded and the report would come. Finally, as I would say, you have to look into all walks of life. Like in Madhya Pradesh, another very important experiment has taken place. I remember one day the Chief Minister and I were discussing about certain issues of corruption. So finally, we came up with this idea. I suggested to him, why don't we convert the citizen charter into an act? because that will be the long lasting solution to these ills, and then provide all these services electronically. So the biggest problem for people when they apply is the receipt. When I give an application, I don't get the receipt, and next, actually this was borne out by the experience only. I tried to say that out of 100 odd applications, the question asked to me was, why is it that villagers are still not getting their mutations done on time in spite of so much of effort by the state government? So I analyzed the kind of complaints we had got. I said almost about 60% of the complaints, Patwari actually does the mutation because he's afraid when he's caught, what answer would he give? But after doing the mutation, he does not inform the applicant. Withholding information is the greatest power the government official has. And then he asks for money, and when the money is paid, he gives the copy of the order which has already been made by the Tehsildar. That is 60% of the complaints. And in another 40% of the complaints, Patwari would turn around and say the application was never made because the poor villager does not have a receipt. So if we can address these two things, and so that is how the Public Service Delivery Guarantee Act was born in Madhya Pradesh, and which has become a great success story. As I am told, almost about 15-16 other states have already adopted it. In Madhya Pradesh, now all the services which have been notified under Public Service Delivery Guarantee Act, I believe it is about 52 services as of now. The computerization program has taken place, the whole software has been developed, and the facilitation center at the Tehsil was bid out competitively. So I am not sure whether the CSCs got it or not. What Mr. Dinesh Tyagi was talking about giving monopolistic rights, but the centers at the Tehsil were bid out, and that infrastructure is getting into place. But the other part of the convergence, that is the e-district program, the Public Service Delivery Guarantee program, would be rolled over through the CSCs. Like the department, the secretary still keeps talking to me because he was deputy secretary when I was secretary, and we still keep exchanging our notes. This CSC would then become the nodal point, because a villager, if he has to travel to the town where Tehsil is situated or block is situated, at least in Madhya Pradesh the situation obtains like this. Many of the people are not confident of going themselves. They actually take a person who is a panch or sarpanch or some smart youth. Ki, please, I want to go to the Tehsil or block. Please come with me. So he spends money for himself. He spends money for the person he is taking as a guide, and plus he pays for, as typically in the districts they used to call it, pan bidi ka kharcha. So in addition to the travel cost, he would end up paying another 100-200 rupees to the person who would accompany him to the town. So a trip, I remember under NEGD one study was made, how much is the expenditure a person makes when he goes to the town for seeking these services. At that time some 70-80 rupees was worked out as the cost. But the fact is it is much more, especially when a person is not really confident of himself. He ends up making 500 to 600 rupees per visit to the town. So CSCs can really play a lot of important role by playing a hand-holding kind of service to the person, because he has to have confidence in you. If he feels that he has been cheated, then the CSC is doomed. So finally it is a quality of service, the way you interact. Invariably the CSC man is a local man. So if you go out, help the person to understand the application forms, because most of these people will not be able to fill up the application forms themselves. And whatever the other back-end activities are there, you can use that. And this is one of the biggest opportunity. And by and large, most of the states and under NEGD, most of the government services are being computerized, especially the e-district project, which is, I'm sure all of you would know the progress of that. Another idea which you can take, which I am sharing what happened in these CSCs in the rural areas, they started a lot of private services. Like Telegram has, Telegram service has been finished yesterday. But some of the CSC fellows, they were running Telegram services or something equivalent messaging services for in between them. Intranet was sort of created from one village to another village. If the message is to be given, they would give it. They would also, and this was not really, did not mature much in Madhya Pradesh, but the Akshay Center, Aruna ma'am is there. they were actually doing giving the IT platform for the business, private to private business. So these are the kind of opportunities you can look up. It is not that every experiment will be successful everywhere, but one can look at the successes at other places and see what is relevant and what would be successful in his area. I am sure this CSC is one of those experiments which would revolutionize this country. This is the biggest investment the government is making, and I am sure with the kind of indulgence that Department of IT and CSC company has, all of you will be successful entrepreneurs. I wish you good luck. Thank you.
Thank you for your good wishes and also sharing this success project in Madhya Pradesh where physical infrastructure is not available and how the government strengthened the virtual infrastructure and extended the services. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Dr. Alok Shukla, the Deputy Commissioner, Election Commission of India, who has been the promoter of the election card through CSCs. And in fact, he has been the first person in the Election Commission to push the delivery of election services using the CSC network. Inviting him for his views.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Secretary IT, Mr. Satyanarayana, Madam Aruna Sundarajan, Mr. Sharma, Mr. Shenoy, Sujata, and of course Mr. Dilip Tyagi. It's a great privilege for me to be here with you today. Our association in the Election Commission with the CSCs is very recent. So I would like to just take the 5 minutes allotted to me to share with you a little about the use of information technology in Election Commission of India. Elections, as you know, are the backbone of any democracy, and conducting elections in our country is the responsibility of Election Commission of India. In the last 4 or 5 years, Election Commission has started using information technology to a very large extent for two basic purposes. One is to provide services to the citizens, where all of you can become a very important partner in all its aspects. And second is to bring about transparency, which is so important for credibility of elections. I will very quickly share with you certain things which the Election Commission has been doing in the last 4 or 5 years, and then you can think in what manner the CSC infrastructure can really partner with us and help us in doing our job better. Let me first come to the services part. Now, in the Election Commission, we believe that voter is the most important person for us, because it is the voter who ultimately has to exercise his franchise and to elect his or her representatives. Now, therefore, it is important that we should be able to provide services to the voter in a very simple manner, so that the voter gets these services at his doorstep without any major effort on his part. What are the services which the Election Commission has to provide to a voter? The first thing is service relating to information, which means a voter should first of all know whether he or she is actually enrolled in the electoral roll or not. Knowledge of enrollment. The second important service is, if a voter is not enrolled, then the voter should be able to make an application in a very simple manner and get himself or herself enrolled in the electoral roll. The third thing is, as you know, that election elector database is probably one of the largest databases not only in our country but all across the world. Our database has something like 750 million records. So obviously there are errors which are partly because of some old baggage. As you know, the old electoral rolls were not even computerized, they were actually typed, initially handwritten and then typed using manual typewriters. And at some point of time when the election commission made a decision of computerizing these electoral rolls, the typewritten electoral rolls were converted into electronic, and therefore it resulted in large number of errors including key press errors, etc. And you would keep reading in the newspapers that males have been shown as females, or age is wrongly written, or there are spelling mistakes, and so on and so forth. Now these errors need to be corrected, and every voter has a right that the entry pertaining to himself or herself should be correct. And therefore when the voter sees that the entry pertaining to himself or herself is not correct, he should be able to make an application with minimum effort on his part, and then he should be able to get this corrected. Then the voter should also be, because we issue these elector photo identity cards, and the elector should be able to get his or her photo identity card very easily. Of course, there could be other services. For example, the voter should be able to find out where his polling station is, should be able to locate it on a map, should be able to reach the polling station on time, and so on and so forth. Now, the Election Commission has been trying to find different methods of providing these services at either no cost or at a very low cost through various mechanisms. One of the mechanisms which we have tried, particularly in rural areas, is an institution of booth level officers, where at every polling booth one person is appointed as a part-time person by the Election Commission. Generally they are teachers, but they could be other people who actually visit door to door to provide these services. Another thing which we have tried is the institution of voter registration centers, or VRCs as we call them, generally at the taluka level or the tehsil level, where a person can actually come and access these services which I just mentioned to you. Of course, a person can always visit a government office. Generally our elector registration officers are SDMs and assistant elector registration officers are tehsildars, so they can visit these government offices and access these services there. But you are all aware of the difficulties which a common citizen faces when he tries to access any service in a government office. Now, I must also share with you that in certain areas, because of the difficulty in accessing these services, it has also led to corruption. In Delhi, for example, we have got several complaints that our own officers, and when I'm saying our own officers, they're not just officers of the Election Commission, they're basically officers of the government who also work part-time for the Election Commission, have been actually asking for bribes to make the ID card. And in certain cases we have taken action, certain cases we have even got FIRs registered, and so on and so forth. One of the reasons is that the importance of elector ID card is so much, it's not only used for elections, but it's also used for several other. If you want to go and buy a SIM card, for example, in the market, they want your ID proof. Till the time that UID actually is able to make Aadhaar for everybody, I think the easiest and the most prevalent ID available today is the election card. So people use it. You go to the airport and you want to enter the airport and somebody wants to see a photo ID. Generally people who don't have a driving license and so on and so forth will take out the election ID card and show it. So election ID card has been used as an ID document for several purposes, and therefore there is a premium on it. And we have found that people have been asking for bribes like 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees to make an ID card. Because we have now everything available on a centralized database, because it is accessible over the internet and online services available, therefore in Delhi we took a decision that we have these 70 voter registration centers all across Delhi, and we took a decision that